Good luck.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Germán Fernández, and I'm the CEO and president of ISAM, the International School of Agri-Management, that is organizing the Green Deal Week webinars series. We really hope that you are as excited as we are for the event today. Today we are starting with the day 2 of the Green Deal Week. Yesterday we have the session that was more focused in Latin America, and we have the speakers from that region. And today it is more focused in Europe, and we have speakers from the region too. In each webinar, the Tritolimas Foundation report is analyzed and is focused on the impact of the Green Deal in different areas and regions. As I said before, LATAM was yesterday, today is Europe, and tomorrow Spain will be reviewed. Just going back, in terms of the logistics and how we're going to structure this webinar, I just wanted to tell you the agenda for today. We'll start right now after I finish with the presentation of the report from the Fundación Tritolimas, made by their president, José Pío Beltrán. Then at 5:30, we'll have what we'll do is we'll have a roundtable with different speakers that I will introduce later on, where they will give their opinion about the report, and they will also introduce themselves. This will be followed by some questions that we have prepared for them, so you can get more insights about their opinion and what they think about the report of Tritolimas. Finally, I will collect from the chat different questions that the audience is going to have. So whilst we are doing this event, please do not hesitate to type any questions. I will bundle them together, I will put them together, and at the end we will make those questions to all the different speakers that are taking part. Okay, so without any further delay, I would like to introduce José Pío Beltrán, who is the president of the Fundación Tritolimas Foundation, who right now has already posted the presentation, and we'll continue with it. Thank you, José.
Okay, many thanks, Germán. Let me take these pictures out. Okay, and so first of all, I want to thank ISAM for the organization of this event that allowed us to present all of you our report on the European Union Green Deal. And so to begin with, let me a few words about the Tritolimas Foundation. So that this is an independent international institution that what we want is to promote a balanced development of a global sustainable food system. And we work with the premises that the motor of the system is responsible business activity. And besides that the system should be based on science, technology, and knowledge. So we are open, of course, to new members. Currently, we include 26 universities, the Spanish Research Council, that's an institution I belong to, companies, consumer associations, food banks, and other related institutions. So quite a large institution here in Spain. And so in December 2019, the European Commission presented the communication on the Green Deal. And this is a very ambitious set of lines of actions just to turn the European Union into a neutral climate zone by 2050. That means only 30 years ahead. And the first question we ask ourselves is do we save the planet or save humanity? So the Tritolimas Foundation thinks that we should do both. So we have to achieve a sustainability of the planet, but this should be in balance with food accessibility. That means an adequate, healthy, sufficient, and sustainable diet for the entire population. So in this respect, I have to tell that we are aligned, completely aligned with the FAO concept of food security. So with this vision of a sustainable global food system, we have analyzed this declaration, not more than declaration, this of European Union about the Green Deal. We have done a report that is in 6 chapters, and this has been built with the help of 30 specialists in different fields. So how the Dolemans Foundation defined the sustainable global food system? This is important to understand in the analysis. So the sustainable global food system is organized in 4 axes. And this contemplates, first one, disponibility and accessibility of food. That means everything you need to produce food. So water, soil, supplies, agriculture, transformed products, the climate change, digital transformation, distribution, all this is in this position. Then you have economy, so the markers, the international trade, duty, cost, prices, competitivity, very important. Then you have the attitude of the consumer. That means behavior, religion, diets, habits, beliefs, gastronomy, everything that forms part of your culture. And also politics and policies, that is very important. So these 4 axes in this model are interconnected, and this means that if you touch one of the factors belonging to one of the axes, you will move other actors in the other axis. So all this is interconnected. So for example, if I make an innovation that makes food, a new food available, but I don't have the proper regulation, that this innovation means nothing. If I make a new procedure that is more sustainable, but this is not competitive, that is in the economy axis, that means nothing. Or I should not think in making food against people, so against religion, diets, habits, gastronomy, etc. So it is very important, this holistic view on the system, and this model that is the Tritolimas model, entitled Tritolimas Foundation, to have an UNESCO chair on science and innovation for sustainable development, with a special focus on global food production and safety. So this is our tool, and then let's go for the different chapters. So chapter 1, we have analyzed if there is a balance between the energy produced by food in the European Union and the energy necessary to satisfy the current demand of the population. So if we check and bit by bit what is necessary to produce in terms of kilocalories per person per day, we found out that to satisfy our demands, we need 9,210 kilocalories per day. And when we check if we are able to produce that, we can produce that energy, we found out a little surplus, because we are able to produce 9,704 kilocalories per day. So this means that our results indicate that the European Union 27 is close to the point of balance, with a little bit surplus, 105%. So after seeing this result, our experts raised the following question: will the European agriculture be able to continue supplying enough food in a sustainable way for its entire population after the Green Deal? Well, our experts raised several doubts on that. And if we move to the chapter 2, and then we see how the Green Deal is reacted against the challenges in agricultural production. The first thing, if we listen to FAO, To have a sustainable agriculture, we need to improve the efficiency of the agri-food systems, to increase the resilience of agricultural systems and adaptation, to conserve, protect, and enhance natural resources, to protect and improve rural livelihoods, equity, and social well-being, and to promote responsible and effective governance mechanisms. So all this is the message we are getting, and how is responding to these very exigent messages the Green Deal. So the Green Deal is telling us is that we should expand the protected areas to 30% of European space. We should reforest with 3 billion trees. We have a 50% reduction in the use and risk posed by pesticides, a reduction of 20% in the use of synthetic fertilizers, a 50% reduction in sales of antimicrobials, so to be used in farms, animals, and aquaculture, an increase in organic farming, reaching a share of 25% of the land for agriculture used by 2030. This is almost next year. A reduction of 10% of the agriculture area dedicated to productive uses. We have to review the regulations of animal welfare and to raise strategies to facilitate and increase carbon sequestration in agricultural soils. So that's a very ambitious, broad aims that try to respond to these challenges that were raised by FAO. So if we, after these challenges, we move to the role of science and technology, and our experts are telling us that today agriculture is not prepared. So we need innovation available to compensate, especially for a potential decrease in agricultural productivity while securing better sustainability. So it is very important that we boost the research, the development and innovation, and an incredible support for science it will be needed. And this has to be without restrictions. We'll see some examples. And specifically, we should promote conservation agriculture, precision animal and genetic improvement, including, for example, new genome editing techniques, integrated pest control, sustainable management of irrigation water, management, treatment, and valuation of wastage, bioeconomy, modern carbon markets, and new food processing technologies. So when you look at all these, it is very clear, if we move to the next chapter, that there will be, all this will mean incredible changes in the production systems and the consumption patterns that will require an update legislative and regulatory measures that are difficult to implement in such a short period of time, especially considering the traditional very slow time course of regulatory matters in the European Union. Our experts found that there is that scientific evidence many times is not well coordinated with legislative procedures. It is now a very hot topic, the regulation, as I said, of new genome editing technologies. And this is an example of lack of coordination where scientists are saying one thing and our regulatory authorities are reacting very slowly. This delay in legislation supposes severe loss of competitivity, and the economic consequence will be dramatic for the European Union, as other partners in the world are already selling these products. Well, coming back to what I think I said before, in this case, it is very clear we have innovation, but without regulation, this is not practical. More examples. When you see the CAP, the Common Agriculture Policy, now establish direct payments and eco schemes to reward farmers and producers who meet the sustainability requirements. That means many new things, many new topics: carbon capture in agricultural soils, organic farming, transformation of agricultural waste into biogas, or artificial intelligence systems to promote more rational use of water, and so on. So all these things, it is very clear that we'll need new regulations And of course, we count with EFSA, the European Food Safety Agency, that is aligned with the Green Deal. But EFSA, by its nature, does not guarantee other issues beyond food safety, nutrition, and public health. However, their decisions are influencing all these changes that are necessary. So if we go to another aspect that worry the experts they raise this very nice question. Are we moving towards a double feeding system? I will explain that. A traditional farming system that's based exclusively on recycling organic matter and living rotations would represent doubling or even tripling the amount of land that is cultivated today. Everybody knows that this is not possible. And besides this aim and procedures we are going to put on probably will mean that we will have a decrease in productivity and an increase in prices of food in 2025. So FAO is advising us of problems that will have people that already are suffering hunger all over the world, because we are considering a complete food system. With respect to organic food, what is what the proposal of the Green Deal, our experts are telling us that there is no scientific evidence that organic, biological, or organic foods are healthier than conventional foods. And when you compare in terms of analytical tools, the nutritional value of these foods, you found out that, in fact, when you found differences, has to be more with the sensory perception than with reality. And of course, we found out that these products are more expensive than conventional counterparts. And even our experts are signaling that it could be ethical problems when you are sending the message that if you don't eat organic food, you don't have a healthy diet. I think we should avoid that because many people that cannot afford these foods and are going to think that they have an incorrect diet. It has not to be the case. So we should avoid making people to believe that natural food is synonymous of healthy food. And of course, it's not possible to feed the entire population with organic products, and this we know. And it is true, again, that environmental pollution is a big problem, and we have to combat that. But always with the perspective of producing sufficient, safe, and affordable food for the entire population. Another point raised by the experts is that the European Green Deal could respond to the demands of the European upper middle income population, but raise the problem of accessibility of these foods to low-income consumers. And this is low-income consumers is precisely the segment of the population that suffers the most diseases associated to an inadequate diet. And of course, there can be healthy diet with conventional products and inadequate diet with organic products. And the opposite is true also. And again, I will insist that even that is not enough of these organic foods for everybody. Well, going to the end, I mean, a big problem that our experts have found in this declaration is that the necessity to carry out impact studies before initiating the European Green Deal. This has not been done at all. And there have been only reactions. There has been reactions by experts all over the world and in the States. Probably you know the USDA report, working with 3 scenarios that only Europe follows Green Deal rules, part of the world, the complete world. Is also the JRC, the Joint Research Center report, and is this the report we are presenting now. All of them are raising the point that be careful with the competitivity of European production. We have to check the possible economic impacts. Probably decrease in productivity might increase the necessity to import. And this will put on the table the problem of the cost of the imports, but also that these imports are probably of food that has been produced with completely different rules of that established in the Green Deal. So, and we will have the necessity to fight against fraud. And all these reports insist in the necessity to have a holistic approach. It will be necessary to keep watching the situation as things like COVID-19, the Ukraine war, the rise of prices and sorts of raw materials like wheat now or energy. And we have to keep watching the functioning of the system, but from, as we are saying, from a holistic point of view, considering all the points in the different axes. So the European Union should not act in isolation. And if we want to succeed, we have to act in coordination with commitment, individually and collectively. And also acting, remember that acting only on one of some of the four axes, that is disponibility and accessibility, economy, legislation and attitude, and balance the system with the serious consequence that we can see, as we have put some examples. So the success of the Green Deal will depend on the proper harmonization of the whole system. That will be quite a challenge that everybody knows, and for that reason we are all worrying about, and there is a tremendous focus of attention on what will happen now with the development of Green Deal. So I think that if you wish, you could go to our complete report. This is a report of 70 pages, so I only have a highlight a few points here and go through it and discuss it, and you can discuss it with that. Will be a fantastic thing. And so finally, just thank you for your attention, and just to keep the time in order, I think that I made it. So thank you very much for your attention.
No, Jose, really good. You really stick to the time. We are actually, which is great. I wanted to mention that the report will be sent to all the attendees or everybody that registered to the webinar, so they will be able to check it in detail. There were a couple of people that also mentioned that there were a couple of there was also a report about Green Deal from Wageningen University, which you probably are aware too. So just good to know. So now we continue, with the agenda. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present the different speakers that will be present in our round table. So we have the pleasure of having Hans Jorm, who is a board member of IFAMA, the International Food and Agribusiness Management Association. Arndt Nenstiel, who is a senior project lead for Europe from Green Deal Bayer, and then Jorge Rey Berlanga, who is the general director of Agroponiente, which is one of the main producers in Europe. As you can all see, they have very, different backgrounds. This is one of the reasons why we chose these type of speakers. So what each one of them, they're going to start and introduce themselves, give a little bit of background about what they've done, and then give a couple of pointers about the presentation that Jose Pio did. So Hans, Arndt, Jorge, who wants to start?
Okay, it doesn't matter. I'll start myself. Okay.
Okay, Jorge.
Well,
thank you.
First of all, thanks to you, Herman and Isam, to invite me to this very interesting webinar. Obviously, this is, I would say, well, a very actual matter that interests everybody, actually. So thanks for this. As you said before, actually a managing director from Agroponiente. We are one of the main growing and commercial companies in Europe, especially in vets. But at the end, I would say that the thematics and the problems are the same. My experience is managing fresh and agriculture companies for the last 15 years. So I will say I have two points or different approach to this matter. One from purely the agriculture point of view, okay, and we will discuss in depth about all this. And the second one about the consumers and the commercial changes in Europe, trends, and what is happening. That I think that we cannot analyze the problem properly without looking to all the supply chain, no, and understanding what is going on. Apart of that, during the last 15 years, probably I have led in my first person the organic development and what has happened during those 15 years in the stop of the development of the organic, the different crises, how it has impacted. So I hope to help and to answer the different questions that we have.
Thanks very much, for the introduction, Jorge. Really good and to the point. And I'm sure that we're gonna get more of your insights when we start with the conversation. So next one, maybe, Hans, if you want to go ahead, please. You can unmute yourself. Or maybe, let's see if I can do it. Or maybe Arndt. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Hans. Working now. Okay, sorry.
Okay, good.
So first of all, yes, thank you also for the invitation to be part of that panel here.
Sure.
More important than being member of several organizations is, I think, the fact that I had the opportunity and the pleasure to lead the organization at Nestle worldwide on agricultural raw materials intake and the interaction between farmers and the factories worldwide that is called Farmer Connect. And in this organization, we were interacting in more than 53 countries with more than 700,000 farmers directly. And we obviously had an interest to get the right raw materials at the right price, at the right quality sets. And that was always with the local governments to look into having the right framework conditions to help the farmers to make it happen. And I think that was an interesting situation. And in the last 2 years, during the COVID situation, all these so-called direct supply chains were the most resilient one we have ever had and seen in the past. And this will give us a little bit of an idea also what may come up, when just going in and having a discussion on the Green Deal farm to fork strategy. Looking into what has been presented and looking into what was on the Green Deal presented, the Green Deal has set a kind of a nature positive agenda. But in the meantime, we had a big black swan, and we will have many of them for the future, okay? And the interesting thing is that the Green Deal from Europe, it's okay, it's a nice paper, again, nature positive agenda, but there isn't an implementation pathway. And this has not been addressed at least to my understanding in the paper that the foundation produced. Because if you do not pay the bill, to the guy who owns the restaurant, and in this case, this is the farmer, you will fail. So therefore, I think it's very ambitious and it's a very good analysis on all the other points. However, the overall idea of what is fine, but the how has never been really explained. And I'm telling you about my story because I had the opportunity to be in so many countries active with almost 1,000 people, on the team. If you do not go also with the Green Deal, very local, we will fail. We will very much fail. And if I go back, to the presentation of José's on chapter 3, we want to transition from a system into a better system where we all agree it's necessary, it has to be done. But for that, this transition needs to prepare people, needs mainly to prepare farmers. There's a tremendous buildup of know-how and skills. And this is also something, again, that is on the how that has not been explained why. And very nicely said in chapter 4 that the legislation is absolutely necessary because we need to set up a new framework for innovation. In Europe also, on startups, venture capital allocation for innovation in this transition from today into the next, I would say, decade. And this is not done by just coming up and saying, well, we will have direct payments, ecosystems. This policy framework normally being put under one umbrella also in Europe will never, ever work because it's too complicated. And that is also a big hurdle that is telling me that if you do not have a simple way in a local approach, that probably just out of Brussels, you can never reach the targets you will set, as we have seen also, and then to discuss today about this organic better than this, so we have to have this setup of targets. So therefore, we have to be very critical and sensitive to what is next, mainly now looking into the chapter 7 approach, where the foundation is talking about where are the weak points, but again, looking into the international markets, this happening of the big black swan, and everybody knows what I'm talking about, has a tremendous impact on trade flows today and even more tomorrow, on logistics, and also on the change of consumer habits. So we will see totally different demands in Europe in certain regions for the future, and therefore we have to be very humble and very careful how much are all those documents and all these policies being put together of value. Because we have seen on the energy debate, just opening the last remark, suddenly in certain countries, atomic energy is not a problem anymore. It becomes every day greener. And this is a very big danger if we act and react in this way also on agricultural policy making out of a troop of people who have never been in the field. So my pledge here is not because I'm coming out of Switzerland and I have nothing to say anyhow on the EU policies, but be very careful that we do not miss out those people who are really doing the job, the farmers. And that means we have also to divide the power of decision making. And that has nothing to do if you're a member or if you're not a member, if you're outside the EU or if you are in. So the farmers, they have to have an extremely important role to play and not just to be dictated what they should do. So that is a little bit in a nutshell from my perspective what I see, but it's an outstanding way to have made that analysis. And yes, also if Wageningen is doing this analysis, we have to listen to every single opinion and then to have the possibility to have a decision made that is an informed decision on many different informations and opinions.
Hans, really great insights. We can see how you really have digging into the detail. I've seen many positive, comments in the chat. I think before going to Arndt, I think maybe Jose, if he wants to add, something to what you said, and also Arndt can do it later on. Jose, maybe if you want to say something.
I fully agree with Hans. I think that's so the general feeling all we have in front of what it's stated in the Green Deal. So and all our experts that have participated in the analysis all are very positive on the ideas and on the wishes. We will have that. However, the problem is there that it's not explained how, and maybe not reflected enough before saying we're going to do that, how. And absolutely agree with that. I think that the farmers should be really participating in their own way to do things. So nothing else to say, Hans. I fully agree with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So then I will move to Arndt so he can make his introduction and share his insights.
Super, Herman, thank you, and good afternoon to all of you. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me. Arndt still, I've been working for Bayer for more than 20 years in various parts of the world, in the commercial organization, in the strategy function for portfolio management, and I had the tremendous pleasure to also live in Asia Pacific for 5 years in a very different farming environment on the smallholder side of things. So really passionate about the topic. I have a rather challenging role here in the company now, but also a very exciting one. Since a couple of weeks dedicated on the topic of the Green Deal for organization, which we take very serious, which we also look probably slightly broader than the focus of today, farm to fork and biodiversity, because as you know, we are heavily engaged in the production of seeds and agrochemicals for that matter. So let's say other elements of the Green Deal with regards to emissions as well as a regulation of chemistry is certainly top of mind for us as well, trying to all put this, to Hans' point, into the perspective of our customers. So what does that actually mean? Yeah. On the report itself, I was very excited, and I have meanwhile gone through it twice. Before I started here, I was rather concerned that all I heard, and when I spoke to colleagues in our organization, when I spoke to customers, when I spoke to industry associations, the environmental aspects were always at the core of everything. And I said, well, is that the end of it? Shouldn't we rather look at the implications of what is being proposed here in a rather broader context? Yeah. So really into the social dimension as well that we have been touching on a few times. Yeah. So I think the report is super well structured and actually opens that pathway. And I can tell you from my own life here in the company, everybody comes to me on a daily basis and said, well, tell us very precisely what does the Green Deal mean for us as a company, and put a number to it, essentially. Yeah. And I'm saying, look, my crystal ball can't be big enough to actually achieve that. Yeah. And that's a result of the fact that we have seen a lot of political wills and desire and intents. And don't get me wrong, it's great to see that push into that direction, sort of being the first really visible outflow of global climate agreements, starting from Paris all the way through Glasgow. But then we fall short of really thinking through how do we precisely implement that. And what I've seen so far is, because there's so many folks involved now in detailing this out, what I can clearly already say is there is really a lack of exchange in terms of how do we do that sequentially, how do we do that over a certain period of time, because reality is in the production, growers need tools, yeah, and I'm glad that we have great customers in Europe that buy our products, yeah, and we want them to continue to do that. But of course, at the same time, we acknowledge the push towards sustainable intensification, which will for sure drive also a change in our portfolio, probably away from volume growth of chemistry on the field to broadening also the portfolio into other solutions. But then at the same time, if you say, well, all of what is being proposed here, for instance, on let's say the regulatory side, the drafts that we have seen there, that would significantly strip off our customers of tools that they're using today. And no grower wastes money and puts more crop protection on the field than they would actually need to do. Yeah. But then saying, well, we'll take all of that away on a very short period of time currently drafted, that will create major challenges. So we really need to say, I mean, there needs to be more reason also in the transition pathway. Yeah. And that needs to have a view on much broader than just us as a company or the industry. It needs to go all the way to growers, to the food value chain, to the impact on the consumer. Now, the positive thing is, I mean, we have now a basis to start this discussion. And what my real hope is that we can move away from a rather dogmatic debate that we've had about what's the right form of agriculture in Europe for the last decades. There's no right or wrong. Yeah, I mean, conventional is not better than organic, or organic is not better than conventional. I mean, there is room for good reasons for both in production practices. And I would hope that within that current climate, we can actually come back from a very dogmatic, very ideologically driven debate, looking at the facts and studies like the one we're talking about today, as well as the other ones that are out there. They should be taken into account to drive this and have reason prevail to say that in the context of the implementation of the Green Deal.
No, thank you, Arndt. Also, really, really good insights. I think, from listening to, all of you, Jose, Jorge, Hans, and yourself, I actually posted it in the chat. I think like all stakeholders need to be taken into account, especially when you are implementing, the Green Deal, So it's like when you have a startup, an idea, one thing is the idea, and another thing is the execution, right? So I think it takes time to do this. So we are really moving well on time. Okay, so now we are gonna go to the next section where we have a couple of questions that we're gonna be presenting, to all of you. I will make the question, and one of you can volunteer, to start with the answer, and then we can build it up from there. So the first question is actually very related. So what are the benefits or opportunities that you see from the Green Deal in your country, region, or company? So depending on your background, you can take one or the other. So, who wants to start?
I'm happy to give it a go. So the benefits, with initiatives of this magnitude, it is always good because they somehow work sort of as shaking up well-established routines. Yeah, and I think that was long overdue, and that is certainly where I see the benefits from the way it has been positioned and communicated. Of course, that triggers anxiety, fear, and also lots and lots of questions.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think the direction is clear where the intention is heading. I'm also very hopeful that as part of the Green Deal, we come to an environment that is more open to innovation in the European context. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about breeding already. I would also hope this goes a lot to smaller startup companies in the agtech space. Really, I mean, that they can thrive and develop their technologies a lot faster, and that is tied then to the objective of increasing sustainable intensification, as I have said. So I do see quite a bit of opportunity here to also, from a technology and innovation capability perspective, position agriculture in Europe back at the forefront and at least bring it back on par with some of the at least self-perceived agricultural powerhouses in the Americas. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, going related to what you were saying, and you were talking about Europe, Arndt, Ronald is asking what will be the impact of the Green Deal in other countries outside the EU, and especially developing countries that depend on the exportation of their goods.
I'm afraid I was expecting that question, and to be very honest, I kept the answer in mind to what you laid out earlier and said, well, if we will talk about risks and challenges, and I was more addressing my view into that direction, at least from where we currently stand. Yeah. The debate is very Eurocentric. We have not really looked at the implication, and in particular, not in the very unfortunate context now of the war in the Ukraine, what the implications would be on markets and on consumers outside of Europe, but also producers outside of Europe. Yeah. and that's by all means missing. I've had many conversations with folks from our own organization, for instance, in Africa, who are super concerned. And I would say that growers but also consumers outside of Europe need to be given a larger voice in the implications. So also here, picking up what the direction that the report sends, I think is the right one. And so we need to open up this discussion in terms of the transformational nature of what we talk about. It goes way beyond Europe, yeah. And also to be very clear, there is another element to the Green Deal from a company perspective to also share that with you. And that's the entire EU taxonomy aspect. Yeah, I mean, we've heard that about nuclear energy, but from a company perspective, this, for good reasons, sets sort of the incentive for private investments to flow into companies that are at the forefront of driving this transformation. That's good. It will, however, mean for us that we need to report our global business as part of the taxonomy rules, not just the EU 27 business. Yeah. So again, here, that speaks for broadening really the perspective of impact and implications of the Green Deal.
Okay, so in summary, you're saying to take into consideration all the different stakeholders, but also the different regions, because each one will have a different type of impact, right?
Exactly. And honestly, I mean, we've seen local Green Deal activities starting. I mean, Japan is there, Korea is there, just to name two. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So why don't we open this up and have a conversation? Because I mean, to Jose's point of earlier, the social dimension with that doesn't stop at the border of the EU.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe Jorge or Hans, any of you that wants, Jorge, being
yes,
a producer, you know what we are talking about, right?
Yeah. Coming back to your question about our region and obviously how the report can obviously absolutely all the report overall is positive. I would differentiate probably 2 or 3 points that can be argued about if they are really positive, but overall I would say that all the solutions are in general positive. Mm-hmm. Also, there are, I would say, some points that you have already stressed. The first one is we cannot reduce productivity. If not, it's impossible. I mean, if we want to be self-sufficient, we need to increase productivity. Also, the answer is technology, genetics, all those issues. Okay. Second one is organic versus conventional. I agree with Arne about the comments. In many cases, I could say that the security and the food safety has really increased. And at this moment, it's like a nice telling. But the truth is that if we want to have enough food for the population, at the moment, there is not a solution. So that is absolutely. And finally, I would like to point another thing, that is, I believe there are environmental issues and topics that are moving more for politic interest than the reality. I put an example. I mean, when I see cotton packaging in some retailers, sorry, that is absolutely crazy. I mean, steel, plastic or a recycled plastic is a much better solution, obviously, than a cotton or other packagings. I mean, that is political decisions that obviously are not considering nothing. No? So I think that a part of those punctual issues that obviously have to be solved, and the big question that is the barriers and the legislation, obviously, overall, it's clear that at the end our agriculture has to be more industrial every day, in order to increase that productivity. And obviously there are a lot of things. There's another thing that is very, very important. I think that is collected in the report, and is about the waste, the shelf life of the product.
Yeah,
I think that is amazing. I don't know any other industry in the world that the waste is so high. And I think that there is something that technology can really help a lot. I mean, there are a lot of solutions, apart of the, obviously, the public opinion, and we need to teach all the consumers and everybody, no? But I believe there are technical solutions for that to reduce the waste and the evolution of different virus and illnesses in the food, and obviously to reduce the waste. So probably there is not a solution. There are a lot of topics, okay, and that is what we have to look for the solutions. But without a general implementation of the governance, and it's very difficult, to be honest.
Okay. Jorge, thanks so much, for the insights. I think there are, the positive sides and the concerns from the producers are what we expected, for sure. Yvonne was actually mentioning that one of the original points of the document is to analyze the impact of the Green Deal with a 360 view. Having into account the 4 axes, and this is something that you were mentioning, right? Where you need to take into account, all the different parts in order to reach a tangible conclusion. Okay, so thank you, Hans. If you want to go ahead, please. You are in mute. Let me unmute you. 1 second.
I'm on mute.
Yeah,
at least here. Yeah.
So
let me follow on the same track as Arndt took the train to. I think the Green Deal, in general, it's very inspiring, and there is a bold vision for this. What I said, nature positive farming system that galvanizes, let's say, in all our minds also a little bit the new market situation. But what we have to look into is that, in fact, this nature positive farming framework, the how, is not done in a way, that it is outcome based, and that we can put all the difficult production system under an umbrella that embraces these multiple forms of the current and emerging practices. Because I think it's totally wrong, to go and to say we have to do more of this or more of that, and then positioning the certain systems, may it be regenerative, may it be sustainable, may it be organic, may it be whatever. This is a waste of time and totally useless. And that is the reason why I think that we have to really build a way forward, a roadmap that shows the outcomes, where you can measure the outcomes, and that you go with indicators, and then you determine the practices to apply eventually again locally. But for that to accelerate, you need also financial, as I mentioned, financial mechanisms that reward to the farmers, and in a way that you can control this nature positive outcomes. And at the same time, policy instruments that really incentivize the uptakes of this nature positive farming practices. And we are far, far, far away from this reality. And unfortunately, I doubt that politicians will be, lacking behind, And by the end, I think that just to finish, my ideas about where we were 2020 and where we want to be 2030. The mindset and the narrative of yesterday was yield, scale, profit. And I would like to go to see, even now with all these black swans around, to have a mindset and a narrative developed for agriculture production systems that are going for the direction of abundance, regeneration, and equity, because then we also cover the social part, and we make sure that we have the next generation of farmers who really do the job, that we have food security and food safety, and that this has to do also with equity, to make sure that the farmers are really remunerated for taking all the risk and for doing this change, this transformation, as I said, from yield, scale, profit into abundance, regeneration, and equity. But it's a nice framework. And yes, you can go and you can talk about it and apply it in the world, but locally adapted to the circumstances and the added values to local farming communities. So it's a great idea, but as many great ideas, as someone said about the startup, not all the startups are really going into the trillions in a few years, like we have seen, and we believe that everything should go in that direction. And we also have seen that not all politics and not all behaviors, are leading to where we want to live in peace, but we don't know how to do that. Yeah.
No, Hans, really good insights. I think they were commenting on the chat that one of the key challenges of the Green Deal is that it's not outcome driven. So you were mentioning having proper outcomes, right? Because one thing is the theory, another thing is the practice when it comes into reality, correct? And I really liked the way you portrayed, you know, the comparison of the 2020 with yield, scale, profitability versus what it should look like in 2030 with abundance, regeneration, and equity. But this takes time, right? I think that's why we are doing this, because I think we need to raise awareness that is not, you know, come and go. You know, it takes a process. You need to take different stakeholders and different members of the supply chain, right? Listen to them, get them all together in order to make it so it happens, right? If not, it's going to be more difficult. Jose, I don't know if you want to say something.
I think that well, I am listening very carefully and enjoying a lot all the things. I just to insist that probably what we miss is to make things in a more quantitative way. So ideas are okay. So the good wishes are okay. But then, and this thing that we try to connect all the systems, considering every aspect and evaluating and quantifying when you touch something, which is the influence in other part of the system, this has to be done. Otherwise, we are just blind. We are just doing. So who is the one saying that by year 2030, that percentage of land should be okay? It's okay. I don't discuss that. But then can you give me a quantification of the effects in the whole system, different? This is what is in front of us. It is very difficult. We try to do it. We have started to do analysis in a quantitative way, and we think that we have to keep doing that. Otherwise, we will be just discussing many times about philosophy, and philosophy is okay, but we have to solve the problems of the people, the problems of the farmers, the problems of the people in general, and we have to live. It's not only philosophy. There are many other things.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that maybe, you know, that quantitative translation might mean when you are talking to all the stakeholders that maybe you need to do it in a process where you need to do it, you know, little by little, right? Because you cannot make the change straight away in certain cases, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. But you need to put the focus that you need to have data. You have, so the speakers were saying it, we have to measure. You need data, you have to measure, you have to know impacts, you have to have aims and impacts. Otherwise, we are blind.
Really good, really good. So we go to the next question, which is kind of linked, but you know, we can focus in there. So we saw the positive sides and benefits. So what are the problems or barriers that you feel that the Green Deal can bring into your country, region, or company? We kind of touched that, right? A little bit. We mix both, but let's focus more on the problems and barriers. So whoever wants to start.
Yeah, maybe let me take it.
Sure.
In addition to what I said earlier about, let's say, really is extending the scope of understanding the implication, in particular to markets which do not necessarily have a big farming lobby, to be honest, in the context of those folks that make decisions here. Yeah, I mean, the usual suspects, the U.S. government, Brazil, and Argentina, are usually very vocal with regard to changes in the European regulatory system as far as it goes affecting agriculture in those three countries. But I would say, I come back to the social dimension. Yeah, any market, Central America, Africa, APAC, where we have a huge number of what we refer to as smallholder growers, a phrase I don't necessarily like, but I mean, just to frame that a bit, I think that's something that has been largely ignored. Yeah, and again, I mean, that is actually the need to do that has increased, unfortunately, again since mid-February. When we talk about the huge shortfalls we are looking into when it comes to exporting cereal crops to Northern Africa, for instance. Yeah, so this kind of analysis has not been really done. Yeah, and I want to pick up another part of the report which Jose was referring to earlier, that the potential that the Green Deal has to create this dual food system, yeah, or really to drive a divide into society, saying, well, you know, here are the ones that are better off and that can actually brand themselves personally, saying, well, you know, I can afford to do this and I can buy the healthy food. Mm-hmm. And then we have a increasing share, I mean, we must really say that, an increasing share in the population that will not be in such a position. Yeah, and I'm talking to you from Germany here. I mean, the average income from Germany is something in the range of 37,000 euro. And that is high in the context of many other countries of the European Union. But if you deduct your living expenses, rent, anything else, and really end up with what is available for spend on food, and then you see, well, you know, we have seen increases in retail of 25% lately on some of on some of the food offered. I mean, this is really a huge issue, and that's not understood. And you know, we cannot deliberate on the consequences of such a societal divide. I think one thing history has shown, when you start seeing that happening, then you get politically a lot more extreme with all the consequences of that. Yeah, I mean, and that would probably be the wrong event to elaborate on that today. But I mean, I want to pick up the point because this is the first time I've seen it so articulated so clearly in an assessment report, and that was really important to do that. So Jose and the entire Tritolimas team, I am really grateful for you having done that so prominently.
Thank you, Arne. So Hans, Jorge? Jorge is going. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously, I think that the problems and barriers, okay, you have already talked about many of them, no? Is legislation, environmental issues, the globalization. I mean, at the end, the competitiveness from other, all these obviously are barriers to the implementation of this, okay? But I think that there are, in some regions, other problems, and are the structure of the farmers in the different regions. In order to implement this new technology and to really to increase the speed of change and not to reduce productivity, and for doing this, obviously, you need capex, you need to invest, you need money. That's the truth. And in many cases, that structure of very small farmers are a barrier in order to evolve and to change the typology of agriculture. Okay, so I think that is a point that I wanted to introduce, because obviously I wouldn't say that it's general everywhere, but I would say that in many regions from Europe, that is what is happening. No, so and somehow. And it's reflected in the report too, about that you need to pay or to receive a premium, no, because of the CO2 that you are fixing in the soil and many different. But I think that we have to build different mechanisms to reward the farmers, okay, if we want that these changes are happening for the future, okay. So that's it. Those are the main barriers that we have. The other is globalization. As you were commented, we cannot compete with different rules in different places, because don't forget at the end that European wants food and cheap food, and that can be a problem. So at the end, if to have that sustainable food is expensive, and rules are different everywhere, we can have a problem. And perhaps now I'm appointing a very business point of view from a European grower, but that's the truth. And is sometimes ridiculous. I mean, we are fixing rules, we are working somehow, and then we are buying products from other places where we are 50 years ago and with different schemes. No? So I think those are a significant problem and barriers to implement this.
I mean, Jorge, I completely agree with the rules, like knowing the market, talking to producers. Sometimes, they complain about what you are saying. And I think everybody needs, you need to have an open mind. All markets can compete, but we need to compete with the same rules. Yeah. Because if not, we are not competing, right?
Yeah.
Hans, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I mean, but the barriers, I mean, we are all of us, we like to stay in our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Farmers alike to politicians, people from industry, consumers, we are addicted to get everything, at the right or at the very low price. As Arne said, even here in Switzerland, I think we have the lowest percentage part of a average income that is less than 8%, closer to 7% of a family's income, household income, that still goes to beverage and to food. It's incredible. And it's sometimes even double the price, like what I buy in Germany. But it is about people do not want to go out of this comfort zone. And therefore, the first thing is that you have to see, what do you do in the mindset changes and in the value sets. And I think this is what is happening, if you see a change, and then it's a threat, then you're getting angry, then you're getting to a point, the fingers to the guilty ones, instead of looking into the opportunity. And as I said, I see in this green deal a great deal of opportunities, but you have to turn the whole thing around into a positive way, even knowing that eventually your business model you're operating today may be jeopardized. I mean, we see that, Arndt, you have that in your sector, in your business, in your segment. We have that in trade. We have that also in many of the food industries and the farmer himself. So the issue is mainly also to see when we want to do this transition, the big threats and the big risks, and then to help farmers or those who are the weakest in the chain to overcome, to really make that mindset change, and also eventually necessarily changing your value set. It's a very psychological issue also. And if it's not perceived, then it will hit you when you're unprepared. And this is exactly what we call then, well, we have an event of a black swan. But I really hope that in Europe, as in the rest of the world, we do not jeopardize this transition due to also political mistakes of economical and political and social mistakes on that roadmap, to really abundance, as I said, and also thinking more regenerative and having a more nature-based agriculture. That is possible. We know that today. That is all possible. But we have to make the heads quite right, to have the right mindset, to really engage and to be curious, and to accept change in the positive way, And that takes us a little bit out of the comfort zone, and mostly those who are living in a tremendous good comfort zone.
Great feedback, Hans. Jose, you want to add something before we go to the questions to the audience?
No, you ask me always after Hans, and I fully agree with Hans, so it's okay. No, okay. Nothing. That was perfect comments.
Okay, great. So now we did the two questions that they were related. I'm gonna leave. I already have a couple of questions on the chat that I want to share with you, and then for the others of the attendees, if you want to start typing, and I will direct the questions to the speakers, and the one that feels more comfortable will answer. So the first one comes from, okay, 1 second. It's more of a comment from Conchi. What is difficult is to understand, is a statement, to understand from a scientific perspective, is that farm to fork goals have neither been built on a technical analysis rationale nor subjected to an impact assessment. So I think this is linked to what you were talking about, outcomes and having CapEx or KPIs, correct? Yep. So I think, that's, we already have discussed. Then the next one, the problem is when rules are not based on science, safety, but on ideology. You were mentioning about politics, right? Jorge, I think I remember he mentioned about that. European farmers not having access to technologies that are available for farmers elsewhere. I think that's a really good point as well. Now, the next question is, what is the opinion of the panelists regarding a potential new position of the European Commission regarding the Green Deal in response of the Ukrainian-Russian war? We've mentioned this a few times. Do they foresee any changes, especially thinking on putting food security first in the next years, in the coming years now? So whoever wants to take it.
Look, I will put it rather bluntly. I really question that there will be one EU position on Ukraine, Russia, and its implication on agriculture. We are all following the discussion around gas supply and oil supply and the like. Very divided EU, to be honest. Very. So I really doubt that we will have one uniform position when it comes to agriculture. I cannot see that. Yeah. Now, what I would say, at least from sort of where we look at what has been communicated by the Commission, by the Parliament, and also some of the governments in the member states, and also some of the activities we have seen, right or wrong, but they have shown that they relax some of the current regulations short term. For instance, allowing for import of crop that exceeds actually maximum residue level thresholds and the like. We've seen a few examples here. My expectation is that the Green Deal in its vision is there going to stay. And because that is part of, as I said, global, really long-term climate agreements, and that's where it's derived from. And also just politically focused, if we look at the current Commission, their tenure will end at some point, and they will make damn sure that they will leave something behind. Yeah. And then if it's only the political frame, that's the absolute minimum. So I would expect that they will heavily push between now and the first half of next year for the implementation, at least of some of the major blocks of the Green Deal. That's just my personal expectation. On the other hand, what I would say, and I'm hopeful that pragmatism comes back in a certain transition period and say, well, are we really well advised to ask for largely a lot of these things at the same time? Yeah. And maybe they will actually revisit and listen to us and say, well, better look at the impact if you do this all at the same time. Yeah. And if we look beyond into other industries, take the car manufacturers, for instance. Yeah, the entire discussion around fossil fuel engines. The initial proposal was to basically prohibit them after a very, very short period of time. And then they figured that actually mobility is important to European citizens. So, we need to find a different way of addressing that. Yeah. And now we're talking about a topic that is way, way more important than mobility, to say it easily. So my hope is that despite all the different political agendas and the dogmatism we still see in this discussion, that reason prevails and said, look, first and foremost, we really need to address that we have enough affordable and quality food available to our citizens, because on top, something that we haven't even addressed because it's not necessarily related to the Green Deal, is the entire global supply chain challenges we see these days. Shipping stuff around the world and the like, that comes even on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Really good. I mean, Yvonne was mentioning that the Tritolimas Foundation will soon publish the document with numerical data, UE simulation as a closed food system that goes, linked to what Arne has just discussed. So asking is the EU self-sufficient based on total photosynthetic production? Okay, so that's a good one. Anybody wants to add something before I go to the next question, or is explained by Arne very well? For sure. Okay, so we go to the next one from Andrea. So do the panelists see an opportunity that the European Union will open up to the new breeding techniques? UK is already moving in that direction. Interesting.
Yeah, well, I think that hopefully, but the point is that we are already with a big delay. And of course, I think it was the 9th of April, UK moving, but has moved on also China, that was very silent till now.
Okay.
And the Japanese and the Americans are already selling these products. I think that the important point here is that we should be able to differentiate among the different types of techniques that can be used to genome editing. And some of them, I think our experts say that are exactly equal as things happening in nature. So it's nothing strange. But it is incredible how European Union is reacting, because I mentioned a few countries, but if you go to South America, many of the countries in South America have already implemented new regulations and new legislation, and it's all over the world. And here, I think that according to our path of doing things, maybe we have to wait probably a few years more to have it clear. And this, I took that as an example. It's not the problem of genome editing. Is the problem in general that European Union cannot be so slow with the legislation in so very important matters. It's not only for these techniques, it's in general. But in this case, it's very, very clear that we will be late. So let's hope. It was a tremendous reaction among the scientific community in European Union. It was almost unanimous as telling you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to, you have to study. You have to listen to scientists, and they promise they are doing. But we'll see. So I am optimistic, but very realistic also with the slowly path of European Union in these terms.
Yeah, I think Jose, you will be more optimistic when you see things really moving, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct. So now a quick question from Saurav. What is your view on Indian agriculture? Just a generic question.
India.
So I guess it will be like in terms of the impact that it could have from, to implement the Green Deal techniques, right? Let's see. I think maybe they're not experts in India, or they're not that familiar. I mean, I just had an interview with an Indian candidate, and they were telling me, how agriculture, works there. I think they're still not as using technology as advanced that maybe in Europe and in other countries. So in order to follow the criteria that are needed, to fulfill the criteria of the Green Deal, especially for farmers that are more like in the subsistence side, not with the export mentality, which is completely different ball game. I think for India, it will be difficult to follow the criteria, right? I don't know from the producers.
I would add to that. I mean, what we've been touching on a few times today, the social dimension of agriculture. I mean, the magnitude of India and the share of rural and farming household is massively higher than in the EU context. So the social dimension is even more important there. And I would argue that some of the discussions we sometimes tend to have at a fairly sophisticated level in Europe around sustainability ideas and systems, I would say naturally in a market like India, the first most important piece is to be able to produce enough. I mean, let's not forget that monsoon is a huge uncertainty in India. You don't know to what degree it's coming. I mean, I recall from my time in APAC, I've been in India many times, and it was the same question every time I asked. So what's the Met Office saying about the monsoon developing? Is it on time, and the dependency on that? So it's really the ability to produce food in the first place. However, at the same time, also transitioning, and that includes the industry I work in, from sometimes really very, very old products into a different level of technology being adopted. So that's also crucially important, because that also has a social dimension. So I would say those are the parallels I see, and probably, I mean, I'll pass the ball maybe now to Hans, because India also is an exporting market. So maybe from your previous life, if I may say that, you have a perspective there on India.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Hans, maybe.
I have to say that the last time I was in India was about 3 years ago. And yes, I do have my own, let's say, perspective. And I would just simply say that the Indian agriculture, they have extremely good smallholder models also that work, that are very much aligned to many of what we would call here a little bit nature positive farming. And there is a lot of things they do, in a way, not on purpose, but mainly because by default. A lot of things like in organic, this is organic by default and not on purpose. That is not negative, this connotation. However, as an overall, to adapt to regenerative or nature positive farming systems, you need, and I'm going back to what I already said, you need knowledgeable farmers. You need a lot of interaction and understanding of what it means to do this and this and this. So literacy levels and all those things, they have a tremendous impact. And I've seen that mainly also in Pakistan, where we were active, and I was active for almost 15 years, very close, working with 10,000s of smallholders in the milk production. But there also what we have then seen is the restructuring of the agricultural model, very similarly to what is happening in China on certain structures, and specifically again on milk. So therefore, the overall idea of becoming more resilient, becoming more sustainable, becoming more whatever, has a great deal to do with how do you structure and restructure agricultural farming systems and the farms itself. Can you mechanize and whatever? And this is only going to happen when overall economy is providing more jobs outside of agriculture to absorb a lot of people who are still in agriculture by default and not by choice. And this is the roadmap I have seen over the last 40 years around the world, in all the countries, and that is what may happen eventually one day also. And we have seen that tremendously over the last 20 years in China, where in fact more than 250 or even more millions of people went absorbed into something else than being a farmer by default.
Okay, Hans, great. So we are running short of time, but there was a really good questions that I would like to share with you from Ushi. Can the EU agriculture be competitive on a global perspective, especially with the goal of the F2F strategy to reduce 50% of crop protection? Do we have enough alternative mitigation measures available proven to cope with this reduction of CP, also in view of resistance management? I don't know who wants to take it.
Well, I can tell you naturally, we are heavily looking into that from a company perspective, of course. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the 50% number is out there, but if you could drill a little lower and say, so what are you measuring this against? And what's the dimension on which you actually measure the reduction? Is this the number of product? Is this volume used on the field? What is it? That is, there is no clear answer and perspective even on the table yet, I would say. At the same time, I would say there is no uniform answer. We need to look at geography and crop on what can be potentially substituted. Yeah, and I can give you one example from my previous role I had. I was in charge of our weed management portfolio, and there was lots of discussion. Said, well, can you reduce chemistry volumes on the field through precision technology? And absolutely, yes. But at the end of the day, I mean, you will not uniformly apply the same dose level across the entire field, but you will actually do spot-specific application that does not eradicate all weeds. But at the end of the day, you also need a solution to actually eradicate the weed. Okay. Yes, that can be mechanical. Is that economically viable in all cases? No. And in some crops, it's just impossible to detect the weed. If you look at cereals, for instance, I mean, that is still a few years out to do that professionally. So you need a chemical solution. I mean, there is no digital herbicide that I've heard of. Yeah. So in that context, again, the plea is this also needs to be understood in the context of the respective crop grown and of the pest, disease, and weed challenges the growers face.
Okay, great. I think we have last one very quickly. Do you think that carbon farming might be the biggest opportunity to achieve the transition of the food system? Let's finish with this one. Hans is laughing. I think he knows the topic.
No, I don't want to be very cynical on that one, but okay. I could tell you a story about an anecdote. I was in Australia, and I was talking to ministers there already 15 years ago, when they were giving me a lecture on carbon farming or carbon agriculture and whatever, you know. And those who have seen what happened there, they give a big laugh on that. I mean, you know, we have to really put our grids together and to say, what the heck are we doing? What is agriculture for, you know? Yes, if it makes sense that you change, for instance, practices, and you can bring back carbon into the soil, and by that you can retain more water or whatever, you know, you have a biodiversity in the soil that is positive. Yes, then do it. But don't do it, you know, with all this, that's my very personal way, you know, of looking into carbon credits and this and that and here and there, and all the intermediaries as a farmer's view, are making money, but not me as a farmer. I take all the risk and whatever. No, as a farmer, I think you have to be part of a very important duty. As we said, mobility is important, but healthy food and affordable, available food is the task. And I'm part of this game. I'm not part of the game, you know, of all the politics and NGO issues and all these kind of things and all the intermediaries, you know, to make a lot of money out of being intermediaries in somewhere and in some system where in fact the farmer takes all the risks and has the least benefit. But a lot of things make sense in regenerative agricultural practices, for instance, and then you do it and you have it, you know. But don't believe that by carbon farming you're going to feed the world and to make the world a better place. But we have to take care of nature as much as we have to take care of feeding people, because people normally with a big belly, they don't go to war.
Okay, great.
And well, you can't do that with feeding them carbon. Okay.
Thank you. So, you know, I think we are going to wrap up. I said 6:30 sharp. Really great, you know, having this discussion today. Jose, Hans, Arndt, and Jorge, you know, it's been a pleasure having you. I think we have a lot of interaction, you know, like in this conversation, and, you know, really looking forward, you know, to continuing this conversation and continue the Green Deal Week. Tomorrow we'll have the webinar more specific about Spain. Thank you.
May I, Herman, say something?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to invite our panelists today and also all the people listening to interact with us and to discuss with us.
Sure.
Our model is a living model. We are discussing, we are rebuilding every day, we are rethinking, and will be very interesting to interact with all of you. And
thank you, likewise. Yep.
And this, I think, we have to get it among all of us. And of course, food security should not be in compromise by sustainability. Doesn't matter that you need to have a sustainable world, but food security should not be in compromise. Okay.
Yeah.
Really good. Well, thanks everybody. You know, let's be in touch. As Jose said, you know, get in touch with them, and, you know, looking forward to meeting you in the future events. Thank you.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.